Oh, hi. Welcome back to Out of the Closet. So, Crime Dog. Oh, sorry about that. Crime Dog's going to read you a story today. He's got to get ready first. He's got to put on his little outfit here. First, we have the bow tie. All right, he always does his bow tie because that's what he does. He's a bow tie guy. Here we go, Crime Dog. Get your bow tie. He loves his pocket protector because he don't want no issues with pockets. And he can't see without these glasses. He cannot. All right, so last week we got into the most difficult chapters of our lives. And chapter 1 was this crazy bitch. Now we're delving into chapter 2. And chapter 2 is simply called Substance. I hope you enjoy it. It reads as such. My introduction to drugs and alcohol was very similar to Leavenworth's and Mary Jane's in many ways. There was curiosity, and this was met with an array of influence that began to guide me down a path of substance. Each substance had something new to offer, and it changed my mind. It made me feel like part of something bigger than I could be alone. It was a friend when I needed one and something to lean on. But when I was young, as the story of life came to me in waves, I was afraid. My parents were there to teach me and to guide me from harm's way. And with them, I was safe, and I knew what love was. There was a sense of it, and a fit that I fell into, which was a snug embrace. As I aged, though, I began to venture from the nest, and what I saw was new to me. No longer was I only afraid of the boogeyman, I was afraid of the homeless. I don't know what caused that fear in me, but it was there, and I knew it. There was something in the way they were. It was different. They came out of the woods like a wild animal, where signs of life shed light on what it meant to live like that. Nothing was completely obvious to my adolescent mind. It was growing and forming notions about the world I lived with. My mind was open to influence and free to perceive. And with reflection came recollection and waves to wonder, to recall, like hieroglyphic writings on a wall. But it wasn't written on a wall. It was written on my mind. My psyche was a sponge, and everywhere I went, my sponge was dipped into what was, with what is at hand. Although I was the same as Leavenworth and Mary Jane growing up, the environment was not. Each environment is unique to the individual, and that includes siblings. They venture out and are no longer guarded by a parent's best wishes. But even the parents' best wishes are mired by what their environments had put them through. They are by default learning to cope with constant change in order to adapt to what life is doing to them. And although most of the change is subtle, some of it is far from it. And that change seemed to have the most lasting impact on one's life. The sudden shift, the abrupt halt, the pain with all the bane of torment that ensues. And the scars are not always physical or visible to the naked eye. Time helps to heal those wounds that are not visible. But some people don't have enough time to find solace in their search for a healthy place to start over. Fear becomes a factor that tests one's resolve to overcome. We fall down, we fall apart, and from high places, we don't ever think that it could happen to us. And when it does, we try to analyze it, to rationalize what it means to be broken or sick, to come to terms with the way life is. It gets hard, and then it gets harder on the way to becoming this laborious task. It is then that faith is a factor, and with that factor, there are many ways to search for something to believe in and to hold on to, something to silently share your deepest concerns with, and to honor in the darkest hours of the grimmest struggle. No substance can erase all the worries of the world. There is no magic drug that will take away our burden and erase all of the fear. Right here in this space is a special place that we learn to grow from. The struggle commands our attention, and we recognize this fact for what it is. The pain and suffering is at times intolerable, with words to describe it almost unbearable. And no matter what we know about the ailments of this life, something new is born to exist, and not always in harmony with what human beings are comfortable with. We set our sights on fighting bugs with our drugs, and they mutate before our very eyes. And no one denies that we have won many of the microbial battles, but some of them confound us to no end. We are met with so much data that leaves us in a fog so thick that we just scratch our heads and wonder which bearing to take before we plot a course through uncharted waters in the most difficult chapters of our lives. At this very moment, Mary Jane wishes she knew where her husband is. He's out on his new motorcycle, sporting his leather jacket and cruising all over Rock Point County in order to get his fix. One part of the equation is at home, his wife, Mary Jane. I just got off the phone with her and she answered a few questions for me. They were pertaining to some pages she had written for this story. It was in regard to her drug addiction and how she got started. Let me explain. Mary Jane is broke sometimes and she runs out of money for the things she needs. I propose that she writes pages for some money. A GoFundMe page, sort of. She hands over the pages and I give her some money. Then I take the pages to help build the most difficult chapters of our life. Some of the pages were written by someone I never knew. I was at work one day when I found a notebook that was written in. I began to read, and I was compelled to investigate the folios, those pages of manuscript. I was completely taken off guard and humbled by the words of a person who felt the need to spill all their emotion into the lines on a page, a place where literature is born by the need to share one's deepest concerns with the world. And when I was very young, my parents began to show this concern openly. They had tried for several days to get a hold of my elderly grandparents. They had both retired, my grandmother from teaching and my grandfather from the pharmacy. He was the pharmacist who was the one who introduced my mother to my father. It was from here that my story began some 35 or so years later. And 89 years ago, they met and fell in love. I was the youngest of the children, and there were 7 of us. And on the day I was born, not a soul was missing. Everyone was here and living this life. Everything was perfect. Nothing was the matter. And I grew up in this place. But it changes over time. I learned how to ask a question, and the answers changed my mind. I am no longer just watching life. I'm asking it questions. The answers make me think. They cause me to discern, to evaluate the trust I put into one's discourse. I'm not immune to being duped. I've been taken to an egregious place in a boondoggle that'll flummox me more than once. Subterfuge is a very good word to know, because once you do, you can try your best to avoid anyone who practices the art of duplicity or chicanery and wants to bilk you or just plain milk you of your hard-earned resources. They don't just steal your money or call you honey. They steal your time and the effort you could spend on people who actually care about what it is that you are doing. And the thing about subterfuge is that it can lay dormant for many years before it is used against you in a deliberate motion to saddle you with burden. It is just like a case of the shingles that wait for just the right moment before they attack the body with burning waves of agony, like torture to endure, and the nerve damage it causes can be debilitating. But there's a silver lining in all of this turmoil. It is the trust we find in the relationships that help us heal from our wounds. It is that which picks us up when we have fallen and sheds light on a once darkened path. It is love and compassion that opens doors to new beginnings. Respect for ourselves is a window into an uncertain future where respect for others creates grace in the world. Dignity is a sense of that respect, and it is born of recognition in the inherent worth of each person, and with self-esteem is brought to life. It is this search for satisfaction that takes us on the journey to fulfillment. This is that story, and although novel at times, it is always in touch with the struggle to belong, a place to fit in, a mold to be cast out of, to find acceptance and a sense of worth. That struggle isn't just in the life that is lived. It also resides in the telling of that tale. I take Leavenworth, for example, and I delve into what I know about this man who wants to be married to Mary Jane. Neither of them can help me to understand what the reader wants, and this becomes an enigma to behold. The whole project fails to fit a mold that the literary world is accustomed to, and all the rules of writing place obstacles far too great for me to overcome without steadfastness to a cause, the laws that govern literature. But the more I study what those laws are, the more I get lost and see the task at hand as overwhelming. And all be it the case once more, I swore I would put it together this time and come out swinging. I fight the addiction, the bad habits, and the dialogue that resonates from within and mental illness. So when I explore these same things in other people, I begin to wonder why they have struggled like I have.